What do you think is contributing to such a tight labor market?
Well, I think a big part of it is that that we have a pretty significant evolution in terms of the labor force in the U.S. In the 2008 cycle, most of the baby boomers were right on the edge of retirement. Right, maybe they were 5 years away from retirement, and I have sort of a firsthand view of this. My parents were born in '47, so they were essentially the earliest of the baby boomers, so I see that very directly. And so in that cycle, they were still in the labor force, and then as we look at this cycle, they're long retired, and I think that story is really what we're seeing throughout, is that we have that demographic shift where a lot of those older workers are coming out of the market. In addition, and it's a pretty important addition, retirements accelerated during COVID in a way that also has taken out 1 or 2 million more additional people. That's about 1% of the overall labor force. Doesn't sound like 1%, doesn't sound like that much, but if the unemployment rate was 4.5 instead of 3.5, that would be a pretty big deal, right? And those early retirements, you could talk a lot about why that is, but the gist of which being, many people have speculated that it's related to like COVID changed people's priorities, changed the way they were thinking. It also, the strong asset price environment was also beneficial because many of those folks retired with elevated assets in place because stocks are way above where they were pre-COVID, houses are way above where they were pre-COVID, and so they had the balance sheet to be able to do that. The last thing I'd mention is we shouldn't forget that there has been a reasonable amount of sickness-related loss of productive capacity in the economy that was related to COVID. Not just the deaths, which obviously were terrible, but long COVID is a real thing and has meaningfully influenced, we're talking millions of workers. It's a little harder to quite quantify in any specificity, but if you think about it, like 1 to 2 million workers early retired, you have some number of folks who I mean, a lot of, we had deaths, which is a real thing amongst the productive parts of the economy. And then we also have this long COVID situation. You sort of add that all up, and there's sort of this like weight that's even bigger than the demographic shift, which would be meaningful even on its own.
Wow, the level of nuance in there is so important because everybody has an anecdotal, like everyone who listens to that is going to have some kind of anecdotal experience that says, yeah, I have a family member that actually did leave work early. It's actually really fascinating. If you compound that on a massive scale, how much of an
Right, you're talking about literally millions
lot.
of people who would otherwise be in the workforce who are out, and that's creating the tightness. That's all there is to it.